Hello. Yeah, I'd like to share some of my experience with Alzheimer's, considering Bill Ritter just announced he's leaving or downscaling his participation in ABC News. Um, I've been in psych wards and experienced firsthand people with Alzheimer's, and it's not a good thing. It's a very slow progression. Um, one day everything's fine, and 6 months later, it's totally not fine. Um, the family implications are, depending on the family, drastic. Uh, they're not psychiatrists. They don't understand the disease or the progress of the disease. And some stick around and some don't. They basically end up living in uh, a psych ward or a locked a nursing home, which is no more than a psych ward. Uh, so and for the person with Alzheimer's, they're very scared. Um, they don't. They get violent. They do become violent because of their scared, being scared. Um, they get frustrated with themselves because they can't remember certain people's names or who they are and stuff like that. Uh, they'll lash out. They'll be violent, and then 5 minutes later, they'll. And if you confront them on why they were violent, they'll be like, "What are you talking about? I didn't do anything," and it won't be a lie. They don't remember. Uh, so you have that kind of dynamic too. Um, it's a very slow decline, and I haven't been involved with the end stages of it. When you die, um, I'm sure it's not pretty. Uh, and they give them drugs, but the drugs are very experimental, so they're like lab rats. They're not very effective. The drugs have no effect. Uh, and for a, a good portion, um, to keep them in the psych ward, to keep them locked up, they have to give them drugs because that's the only way the insurance company will pay for it, and it's the way they can justify keeping you locked up because they have to give you medication. Whether you need it or not, or whether it works or not, really doesn't matter. They have to get paid. None of these Alzheimer's patients are locked up and somebody's not getting paid. The bottom line is cash. They don't care. If they don't get paid, then they let grandpa walk into the nearest lake and kill himself, because they really don't care. They just want the money. And Alzheimer's is going to be a big money maker. It's going to be a big, huge problem in this country, and it already kind of is. So, but it's going to get a lot worse. Um, but it's about making money. Uh, and the drugs they give them are very expensive because they're experimental, and it's again making money, not making a cure. I mean, nobody's going to cure Alzheimer's. Uh, they can't even tell if you have Alzheimer's. I mean, even when you die and they do an autopsy on your brain, the markers that they use to determine whether or not you have Alzheimer's really aren't determined that you have Alzheimer's or not. So they can say you have the markers, but they can't really say you have Alzheimer's. And there's different types of Alzheimer's. There's dementia. There's Alzheimer's. You know, so they don't know what you have. They really the blind leading the blind. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They act like they do, and they won't admit that they don't know what they're doing, but they don't know what they're doing. You know, there's you know, uh, Bill Ritter said on his address to the nation that he's on a treatment that's slowing down his Alzheimer's. Well, I can tell you he's not. They're lying to him. There is no treatment. Um, you know, they might say in studies it's shown to have uh, slowed down somewhat, but you know, they're a bunch of crap. It's a bunch of crap. They want you to believe in the medical industry, like the medical industry can solve all these problems, and they really can't. You know, but they don't want you to walk around and say, "Oh, the medical industry, they can't do anything." They want you to go around, "Yeah, we believe in the because all the money that goes into research. If you attack the medical industry saying they can't do anything, then the money that goes into research gets cut in half, and they don't want that. So they keep the BS going, the illusion going that that they can solve these problems. Now a lot of the problems like cancer is very solvable, but they don't want to solve it because the treatment makes more money, and the treatment goes on for the rest of the person's life. Cuba cured cancer with one shot. You get one shot in the arm, and you will never have lung cancer again. And Obama took it and squashed it and made sure that it never entered the United States. They wrapped it up in study. Oh, we're going to study it. In like 5, 10 years down the road, we'll prove it, which is bull because they're never going to prove it. They're never going to. It's all crap. They squashed it. But if you go to Cuba, you can get it, which might be a big reason why we're attacking Cuba the way we are, because we don't want people that cure cancer. Curing cancer is bad for business. Uh, you know, Treating cancer with a endless slew of treatments and that cost thousands and thousands of dollars. That's the way they want to go. And it has nothing to do with curing you or helping you. It has to do with making money. You know, so cancer is a $1 trillion business, and they don't want it to go away. And it would, and it can, and they don't want it. And they like the fact that people die. They like the fact that people die because less Social Security, less problems of the old. Uh, they love the COVID was great for them because it killed off a lot of old people that were had one foot in the grave anyway, and it was just like push them over the edge. And that's what they wanted, and that's why they created COVID. And I don't know that COVID was even a problem, but I do know the vaccines caused a lot of problems, and they were forced on the people, and they killed a lot of people. And sure, they didn't say the vaccine killed you; they said COVID killed you, but it was the vaccine that killed them. And I had a heart attack. I had 2 heart attacks, and I was under the vaccine, so I can't say. And they said I had COVID once. I felt like I do right now. I felt no problem, no nothing. I said they lied. They lied on the blood test or whatever test they took. It was a lie because I didn't have COVID. I was perfectly fine. And it's just when you don't trust the medical industry, it causes problems for the medical industry. And they should own it because they deserve it because they're not trustworthy. They do what's good for money. They don't do what's good for the patient. And they don't care about the patient. All they care about is the money. And when you have that dynamic and your life's on the line, it's hard. It's really hard. Uh, but I feel sorry for Bill Ritter. I know what he's going to go through. Sure, he's rich, so he probably won't end up in a state psychiatric hospital. He'll probably end up in a cushy, locked uh, nursing home somewhere. Uh, and his family will stick by him probably. But I know people that, you know, I don't know exactly what they did because I got one side of the story, which is their side of the story. And this one woman was in Pilgrim, and her whole family abandoned her, totally abandoned her. And she was an EMT. She was an EMT for many years. She was a school bus driver for many years. Retired, had pensions in both fields, and never got a visit from her husband, her 3 kids, her grandkids. Never got a visit from anyone. They didn't give her money. They didn't give her anything. They wouldn't call her. They wouldn't talk to her. They wouldn't write her. They cut her off completely. And, you know, now I don't know that she did something that was unforgivable, but if she has Alzheimer's, then, you kind of like, it's like, how can you blame her? But they did. And, the one son of hers is a captain in the uh, Brooklyn Fire Department, and he was a real scumbag for cutting off his mother like that. And I'm not saying she was easy to deal with, but I don't think it's right to cut her off and make her lose everything. And uh, it's just, and the grandkids, they didn't deserve to lose their grandmother. And it's just that's what Alzheimer's does. People don't care because they figure, well, I should never remember it anyway. If I go and visit her, she might not even remember that I even went and visited her, so they don't even bother going. And it's kind of like that dynamic as well. It's like why go, why bother? She's not going to remember, and to an extent, they're not wrong, but it does help them at the moment, and I think you should support somebody that raised you and supported you in their time of need, and you know, she wasn't to blame uh, for getting Alzheimer's. And, I would talk to her and she would tell me the same story over and over. And I would just be nice and be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, act like I never heard it before. And that's the kind of thing you deal with a lot. They tell you the same story over. You tell them something about yourself and they'll ask you again, what did you say? Or what do you like? And they don't know. They really don't know.